Top of the Props is brought to you by Barkingham Palace Dog Grooming at Lemire, 1/10 Holiday Road, Lemire, where every pups are king or queen. Find them on Facebook, Barkingham Palace Dog Grooming, Macarthur. If you'd like to sponsor Top of the Props, contact us, the 81st Minute at outlook.com. Alright, so a brand new episode of Top of the Props, and this week we have another great front rower from our past. He made his name at the St. George Dragons, a St. George junior, and plenty of stories to tell. He represented Australia, New South Wales, and finished off his final year in the top grade. A fantastic season as one of the veterans in a resurgent 1991 North Sydney side. It's Pat Jarvis. Thank you, Pat, for joining us. Mate, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Curtis. Good to be on.
All right, so Pat, you probably talk about this almost as much as anything else through your career. You become a policeman in 1978, if I'm correct, and a couple of years before you start your first grade career at St. George, and you're on the streets. You're working Newtown. Can you explain? I guess everyone sees Newtown now as this hipster paradise, and all these crazy moustaches and all the rest, and these weird haircuts. But can you explain what it was like working as a copper in Newtown in the 70s, the late 70s?
Yeah, the streets were pretty rough back then, as far as the place has changed so much from then till now. But it was good days in the police force. We had a great team there at Newtown and got along so well with the guys there. But there was always a blue somewhere, or a pub. There's a fight, or there's complaints and around the area. So it was exciting as a young police officer to be in that environment. You know what I mean, and to get out there and mix with the people and what's going on. But they were good days. But you move on, and you move on to other things and do what you feel is the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, and I guess my question is, when you were going through school, or you're a younger fella, some people want to be firefighters and astronauts, some people want to be policemen. When you were growing up, did you always want to play footy? Did you want to be a policeman? What was young Pat Jarvis's goals growing up?
Well, I was pretty happy just playing footy as a kid. I just loved going out there every weekend and running around. And we had a large family of six kids, and so you always had plenty of brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
We were all pretty close. I think Mum had she had 5 kids in 7 years. It was pretty fast.
Yeah.
Fast production, you know what I mean? Yeah, and so we were really close, and then you didn't have much, and you didn't desire too much, but it was you kind of just went along with the way of life as it was at that time, and footy was all there was to do. So you played footy, and otherwise you'd be riding your bike or out on the street somewhere. And I was always a St. George junior, and Dad would take us to the games, and we'd sit on his shoulders and crazy about the football on the weekends, and then didn't see myself as making the big time, so much. It was like I just wanted to play football down the park with somebody, and then the opportunity came up from President's Cup. I played President's Cup with a few guys, Graham Buckley, and Graham was a good friend of mine, and Bucko and I, we got called up into 3rd grade from the President's Cup outfit, and we sort of just went along with what whatever was happening, and then the funny thing about my career, I started in with St George in the lower grades, the third grade, and then they changed that to under 23s. So I was between third grade and second grade, third grade and second grade, and then suddenly I was too old for third. They changed third grade to under 23, and I was too old for third grade, too old for the under 23. So uh, I found myself sitting on the bench, and I went and saw the club secretary, and I said, "Can I speak to Harry Bath?" Because Harry Bath was the coach.
Yep.
Because I was a bit pissed off because all I wanted to do was play footy. I didn't care what grade I played in as long as had a game. And then so I said, Harry, I said, I'm on the bench. I said, what do I need to do to get off the bench? And he said, well, you need to go and practice a couple of things.
Yep.
This, and this. And I went home from training that night, and I went down the behind my house where we lived in Arcliffe. We had a big paddock there, huge paddock, and that's where we played all our footy as kids. And we still had our own goalpost that we put up in the park. And I went down there and I started practicing. After training, I go down in the dark, and then after work, I go down in the dark again, and then. I practiced. That was Tuesday night. I practiced Tuesday night. I practiced Wednesday night. I practiced Thursday night, and I come to training on the Thursday, and somebody had dropped out of the team through injury, and I was back in the team. But now I was focused on what I needed to do to be an asset to the club, and that weekend I played second grade, and I got man of the match, and sat on the bench for first grade the same day, and then Harry Bath picks me in the first grade the next week. So I went from reserve grade to first grade in a week.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, and it was the only thing about it was I didn't know what what was needed and wanted. I was just going out there and playing, and when they told me, I went, "Oh shit, I better start practicing." So I started practicing, and I stayed in first grade for the next 11 years.
So the way Harry said it, I guess you can explain better than anyone Harry Bath's style as a coach, and obviously he played in that mighty Dragons team of the 11 straight team, and arguably the greatest player to never don the Kangaroos jersey. What was he like as a coach, and particularly if you can explain what it was like coming through the grades? How was he one-on-one? Did he have his own style?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a lot of time with him. I only had the 1 year with him, but he was very astute as a coach, and didn't waste words, and like stood his ground, and he carried a lot of respect, and but he had the experience, and everyone listened to him, and so I had the 1 year, 1981. I played under him there, and I enjoyed working under Harry because he was, he got me started. He got me focused on what I needed to do in order to play first grade, and I appreciate I appreciate him telling me what I needed to do. But the only shame about it was I probably could have done it a couple of years earlier. So, but it doesn't matter now, and they were good days.
And at the same time, Pat, you're still working with the police force, and you get called out from apparently, from online. You get called out a few times, and there's some scuffles in the streets and whatnot. And obviously, you can shed some light on this in a second. But there's a guy that you tuck under your arm. His name's Jeff Fennick, a young bloke from the streets of Marrickville. Can you explain for those that don't know the story? And if you are a rugby league fan and you don't know this story, then you need to check this out. And thank God you're listening to this podcast with Pat. Jeff Fennick, how did this all come about? You said, look, mate, you're better off, if you're going to throw your fist, do it in the gym rather than out in the streets?
Yeah, Jeff was pretty just a kid from St. Peter's. He lived down at St. Peter's with his family, and
yep.
And he was pretty fiery as a kid, and we turned up where this family were boarded themselves up in their house and were terrified of coming outside because Jeff was out there threatening them.
Yeah.
Because there was an incident in the park, and they were dirty and he was dirty and everyone was got out of control. Anyway, so we go down to sort it out, and Jeff's there and he's talking at 1,000 miles an hour, trying to get himself out of trouble. And he mentioned one bloke, and it was the guy Johnny Lewis.
Right.
And I knew Johnny well, and because Johnny was the boxing coach at the police youth club.
Yep.
And I used to train down there sometimes. So he mentioned Johnny's name, and then, that was all he needed to do. And then I said, well, you better get your tail down to the club and focus on your boxing and stay off the streets, And it wasn't too long before he was going through the numbers in the amateurs, and then became the Australian amateur for his division, and went from there to professional. So, but it was a great career that he had, Jeff, and he did very, very well, and he kind of revitalised boxing in this country.
Absolutely. Sorry, mate. Go on. Sorry, Pat.
Yeah, well, anyway, the funny thing about it now, all these years later, is my nephew's coached by Jeff.
Yep.
And he's won the WBC in his weight division, and Brock Jarvis.
Yep, that's amazing, isn't it?
So, and Jeff's a good, good coach for Brock, because he's done it, and he's steering him along. He's right in the highlight of his life right now, because he's in a very good position.
And I just want to go back quickly. I think this wasn't long ago, and Jeff Fennick was speaking to Fox Sports, and he's speaking about you here, Pat. He says he came to a couple of the instances that I was reported for fighting and stuff in the streets. Pat spoke to me and told me there were better things to do. We formed this amazing association. I can honestly say I loved him. That's amazing. That, like, have you thought about the fact, Pat, and you're a humble bloke, obviously. You speak about your career the way you do, but are you aware that if it wasn't for yourself, we may never have seen Jeff Fennick, the world boxing champion? Is that crazy to think about, like what you did for him?
Well, I guess it was good timing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He could have got somebody else, but the fact that I knew Johnny Lewis, and I had the connection with the youth club, and it was just for whatever reason it was just good timing, and Jeff was good enough to realise that he's got a career ahead of him, and I better focus on what I should be doing, and and he made it happen, and along with Johnny Lewis, and it was just good fortune that we all came together at the same time, and and Jeff knew who I was from the footy,
Yep.
so yeah, that's the way it worked out, and uh, it was it's a nice story. It has, but there was a lot of hard work and dedication by a lot of people, to get those things, happening.
Was his, correct me if I'm wrong, his first world title win, was that in Sydney at the Pavilion?
I don't recall where it was exactly.
Were you there though that night when he won his first world title?
Yeah, I went to most of his fights unless they were interstate.
Yep.
He fought in Melbourne a couple of times, and yeah, but I used to love going to the fights. It was a great atmosphere. The fighting game. There's something about boxing which kind of, I feel, probably every bloke has a bit of a liking for.
Yeah.
Wish they could be like Rocky. You know what I mean? I remember that movie when the Rocky came out. I saw that at the movies. I went home and I got the raw eggs out, and mate, I was in his violence.
Oh, look, we all do it. Like, I'm a little bit younger, but even when Rocky comes on now, you start jumping around. It's true.
Yeah, that was a great era. That part of it, anyway.
Now, Pat, like you just mentioned too, you're a little bit frustrated. You're knocking on the door for first grade. You're up and down through the grades as well. The Dragons win the title in '79. Now, that's just before you get your start. You were obviously part of the club in '79. What was it like? I mean, obviously you're there, you want to play, and the Dragons win the comp. What was it like being part of the club, but not quite, not quite there, if you know what I mean?
Well, I was there and hadn't actually realised
So this is before you started the training, the extras.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the club playing third grade. Then it was under 23s, and second grade I was going up and down between the two grades, but couldn't hit first grade. And it wasn't until they put me on the bench that I walked in and said, "Oh, listen, I'm not happy about this.
Yeah,
what do I need to do about this in order to change something?" And it wasn't until I asked that someone told me advised me what I should do. So I took it. Took the words and started practicing to try and improve my game, and got instant success at it. And so that was it was no, I don't regret anything. I love footy, and I played over 300 games I played in my career, so it was just good fun. We just loved it. I would have. Unfortunately, I finished in '91. I would have liked another year or two, but it wasn't to be. Doesn't matter now.
There's a couple of guys I want to ask you about, and when you're finally in the first grade side, he becomes your front row partner. The first one's Craig Young, who was a dead set legend as well, and another guy who, if I can ask for a few comments on as well, was a guy called Bruce Starkey, who was a little bit older than you, and he came from the same club at Uncliffe. what roles did those two guys have? Because one obviously is a little bit closer to home. He comes from the same club as you at Arncliffe, Bruce Starkey, and then there's the big man himself, Craig Young. What was it like for different reasons? And if anything, how did they help you become a better player?
Well, Craig was our captain, and he was a good ball playing forward, front row, and he had good skills in that way, and there weren't too many ball playing forwards in the game back then, apart from Arthur Beeson, and then so it was good to be. I admired these guys because they were there at the club, but I wasn't playing with them, so I kind of they were my heroes. You guys are playing first grade. That's where I want to be, but I'm not there yet. So, and then Starks was he was a little bit older than me, but I kind of replaced Starks. So I felt a little bit sorry for him because I was taking his spot. You know what I mean? And so that's. And Starks was on the end of his career, and I was at the start of mine.
Yeah.
So that was a funny situation. But we had. I knew of Starks prior to that because we played in the same juniors club.
Yep.
With Arcus Scott. So it was interesting days.
If you and like I it's not your run-on start, but I don't know if you remember this day, but I looked it up today, and I can just imagine what 18,000 fans at Cogra in 1980 would have looked like. A little bit different to today, where they kind of, I guess it gets to a certain limit. There's OH&S issues and all the rest of it. But back then, they pack in as many as they can. It's a Sunday Arvo game. As I said, 18,000 people. Two very good sides. You guys in 1980, you finished 4th, and Parramatta finished just outside the 5 in 6th spot. And you come off the bench. Can you remember how many minutes you got that day? That was your first. That was your first taste of first grade. It was off the bench against Parramatta.
I think Bob O'Reilly was playing for the Bears, and coming off the bench as a young St George junior to go run on in first grade, it's just like you'd run through walls, and
Yep.
there was nothing that you felt could stop you. You felt impregnable. You felt so. This is such a big point, a big moment that I remember it clearly how the adrenaline, you can feel it going through your veins, and it's kind of like, just let me out there. It's an amazing feeling. It's kind of like when you run out for the state of origin or a grand final, and it's the same experience, where you just want to get the game started, and you just can't wait to get the ball, and you can't wait to make the first tackle, and get underway. Very, very exciting times. Like it's tingling going through your whole, and through your hands and your legs, and you know what I mean. You're just really excited about the impact and it's a magic experience,
And the other thing too that some younger footy fans may not understand is particularly back then and around the St George area, and I mentioned this to you earlier today, Pat, that I grew up for a while there in St George, and my whole family's from the Cogra area or Hurstville, and they were all Dragons fans growing up. So even before then, kind of like the 11 straight and all the legends that have come through that club, and everything was so localised back then. The players worked in the area, they lived in the area, everyone kind of knew each other, and then to go out there and play for the Red V, I'm sure would have been incredible. And that rolls us into your first run-on start in 81, round 14. It's against Cronulla, and I won't bring up the result because I think he's got dusted by about 20, but there's two blokes on the Cronulla team, a couple of Kiwi fellas, Dane and Kurt Sorensen. Now, can you explain how good they were or what it was like to play against those two fellas?
Well, Dane was a front rower, and Kurt he'd play anywhere from second row to the wing.
Yep.
Yeah. And Dane was just a hard nut, but Kurt had an extra leg. You know, he was fast. He was bigger and wider than, you know. He had a back on him. It was like the side of a bus. Yeah. So those guys were in their prime back then, and you know, I think Dane still lives in the area. I don't know where Kurt is these days. He went and played a lot in England. But yeah, they were good. They were big names back then with the Sharks.
And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, you get picked for City first, and which is an achievement in itself. And then in the same year, you just bang like that. You're playing for Australia at Carlaw Park in Auckland, which is, and I was speaking to Joe Vunganar about this last week, about the heritage of Kiwi Rugby League and that home ground, Carlaw Park, which is unfortunately no longer there. You're playing for Australia and you're against the Sorensens again. You get the win. Did you, obviously you don't know at the time that that's going to be your one and only Kangaroos jersey, but did you have time? Could you appreciate at that moment in that week when you were told that you were going to run out for the Australian team?
No, it was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
I remember Roy Masters called me up when I was at work. I was in the police force at that stage.
Yep.
He said something like, "How does it feel to be the first local junior to play for Australia in the last decade or something like that?"
Yeah, yep.
And I said, "What do you mean, Roy?"
Yeah.
He said you've been picked to play in the Australian team. I was like, holy hell! Woo!
Yeah.
You know, if I hadn't walked in that room on that Tuesday night and seen Harry Bath and said, "Harry, what do I need to do?" That would have never happened. You know what I mean? My career would have been come and gone, and so I was very fortunate to get that opportunity to ask for advice and get a few bits of advice from old Harry Bath, you know.
Yeah, and a couple of years later, you played for Australia.
Yeah, that's right. So it was like they were exciting days, you know, like back then, you know. So, you know, pretty exciting moments in your life, and you know, like it's kind of like stardom. You know, you become a star, and you don't feel like you're any different.
Yep.
But everyone knows who you are, and people want your autographs, and you go, oh. All important now.
Did you quit the police force around this time, or was it after that or before that?
Oh, I left the police force in 1986.
Oh, 86. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I got my facts wrong.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what was it like working your beat and being a police officer and being an Australian, you know, Blues Dragons representative? What was it like working in the police force those days?
Well, it was a bit embarrassing sometimes when you pull some guy up and you say, "Oh, Pat Jarvis, can I have your autograph?"
Yeah, did you still book him?
You go, "Oh, geez, well, I can't book this guy."
And look, and you're in that rare group where you represent Australia before your state, which I guess it happens a little bit more these days. But in '84, your name is read out for the first time for the New South Wales Blues. I guess today in 2020, Pat, state of origin, I guess for our state is a completely different beast to what it was for New South Wales and our mindset back then, because we chopped and changed our sides all the time when the new concept of 1980 state of origin came in. And I guess for Queensland, they, with their passion and the fact that for all those years they had to play, against their own, statesmen and all that kind of stuff. In '84, like obviously playing for your state's amazing, but in '84, would it be a different feeling back then getting picked for New South Wales compared to today, or was it still just as exciting?
Oh no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just it didn't matter like what year it was. It was a great, exciting, like thing to be involved in that scale of a game.
Yeah.
So like the game. And the game is still great. It's greater than ever. Like
Yep.
playing Origin is bigger than ever. It's still the pinnacle of rugby league.
Yeah.
Apart from the grand final, but that's a different, just a different aspect of rugby league. So no, it was a great. A great thing for me to go through that. I'd love to do it again, but not this lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm
And
too old now.
I bet you'd still try. So, look, in '84, unfortunately, the Blues go down in the first two games. So Queensland got the series. You're off the bench in those first two games, but you get called into the starting side for Game 3 at Lang Park, which is fantastic. Yep. Can you explain what it was like back then? You run out for your first starting spot for the Blues at Lang Park, alongside another, I guess, by this time, obviously, he's a representative front rower, Steve Roach. That would have been amazing. Your first starting spot, you run out Lang Park, the old Lang Park as well. You're up against the King and all these other fellas. What was it like playing against some of these Queenslanders, particularly in those early '80s at Lang Park? In the cauldron.
It was unbelievable. It was just fantastic. We in that third game for that '84. We had a new side pretty much. There were some guys in that team that were just hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We weren't the best side. But we were so enthusiastic, Everyone was hungry, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we had nothing to lose, and we just played like that. And it was, I think, it was a great. The whole State of Origin series is still just phenomenal to me. I love it. Can't wait to watch it every year. It was tough being a New South Wales. I was there for a while, but thank God Freddie's got things happening now, and he's doing a good job, and he's turned things around for New South Wales.
Sorry, Pat, go for it. Sorry, mate.
No, good days back then. Thanks for the pleasant reminders that you.
That's all right. It's all part of the process, mate. I do want to go back to club footy for a second. Now, we're talking after the Origin series in '84, and back to St George for a second. So I just want to go through. From 1980, the Dragons are minor. They get knocked out in the minor semi. '83, knocked out in the minor semi. '84, knocked out in the prelim final. Coming into '85, you're now one of the leaders of the St George team. You basically run first or second for the entire season. You make the grand final. Did you guys feel like this was, the premiership window was kind of closing on this team? Was there an understanding that if it was now or never for those 85 Dragons?
Oh, I don't know if that was the viewpoint.
Yeah. Okay.
There was it was a shame we lost that game. It was you can't change it, but we had a great year in '85. We won the third grade, we won the second grade, and then we lost the first on that day. So it was like a fairy tale. That day had we won that game, it would have been 3 grades in the grand final, 3 grades, 3 up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
it doesn't happen often, does it?
Yeah, that was kind of losing that game was hard to take. It was hard, very very hard to cop that. Anyway, that was a tough one.
It was only 7-6 too. It was only 1 point. So, I mean,
yeah,
a few things go the other way, and you might have had your 3 premierships on the day.
Yeah, that's right, mate. They were exciting times, but sometimes you lose, and unfortunately that was a loss. But like it's always you can only have one winner, and it's a shame it wasn't us on that one.
Yeah, and 86 rolls round and you've missed the finals, and that unfortunately is your last season at St George, and that would have been hard to take. Can you explain to us what happened there and how you ended up at St Helens for the English season, and then back to Canterbury for 87?
Well, it was a personal choice. Like end of '86, the club was they were letting some of the players go. I didn't feel like that was the right thing. We had such a good squad there at St George, and I felt that like Roy's time as coach was Roy Masters. I mean, his time as coach was probably at an end, and that we had a good team. Maybe it was time for Roy to move on, and they because what I was at the start of 1986. A strange thing happened at St George where Wayne Bennett was invited, or whether he was invited or by Roy or whatever. He came to a couple of our training sessions and ran the training sessions.
Oh, right.
With Roy in the background, and that was my first time I'd met Wayne Bennett. I thought, wow, this guy's pretty damn good. I like this guy as a coach. And then come the end of '86, they started letting Michael O'Connor, Stevie Morris, Perry Haddock, I think Chris Walsh, and they were letting these players go. And I just saw it as not the right thing. I said, you shouldn't be letting our players go. Should be holding on to these good players. And we just need. I think Roy's time was up, and we needed to get ourselves a new coach. And the first person I would have grabbed would have been Wayne Bennett. and I, the club spoke to me then about the '87 season. I said, "Look, I think I'm better off. Um, I'm going to leave the club now
Mm.
because I've had 10 years at St George, and I don't know how much longer my career will be,
Yep.
but I, I'm I'm chasing a premiership.
Mm.
I want to win the premiership." I said, "We're not going to do that at St George now. We've missed our chance."
Mm.
And I said, "You're letting our players go." That was the other thing, Curtis, was they took us away from Cogra Oval,
Yep.
and they made the SCG our home ground. It was
Mm.
like you're playing in front of a paltry crowd every week. It was like it didn't have the atmosphere. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So there were these negatives they were introducing, and I had decided, well, I can't play forever and try and get a premiership. I think I'm going to have to find another club, and anyway, so I told the club, I said, I'm not interested I'm not in whatever you're offering me. Isn't about money.
Mm.
It's about I've got a passion here to get a premiership, and I don't think I'm going to achieve that here at St George.
Mm.
And I'm going to leave the club, and that was my final decision. And so that's what happened there at the end of '86, and I went on to Canterbury from there.
So was that deal with Canterbury done before you went to England for that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Okay, so 87, you're back in Sydney. Yeah, I don't know if it felt weird for you, but you're in the blue and white instead of the red and white. And you get your Blues jersey back. Did that feel like, I don't know how you felt against St George back then in 87, but did it feel like some justification? You're at a club on the rise, you got your Blues jumper back. Did you feel justified in leaving St George at that point?
It was a tough decision to make, but
Mm,
because I was born and bred St George,
yeah.
it was hard to do. I lost a lot of hours sleep trying to decide what I'm going to do here. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And it wasn't an easy decision, but you've got to live by whatever your own thoughts and your own passion, and that's what I did. So I ended up at Canterbury for '87, and then I had a serious knee injury, and
that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, that was the next question. Did it piss you off that you were back, you were playing great footy, you were back in the state team, and then you do your knee? Did that throw you off a little bit?
oh, uh, that was pretty severe. Like, what's the name? Bullfrog. Bullfrog didn't think Peter Moore. That
Mm,
is.
yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. He didn't think I'd get back. The doctor told him I don't think I'd make it back from that injury.
Mm,
It was a pretty bad knee injury, and so he kind of he made me an offer for the '88 season, which I had to refuse.
mm,
And so I just said, "Oh, sorry, I can't do that."
yep.
Anyway, Arthur Beeson, he picked me up,
Yeah.
and I
At East. Yep.
and I went over to the Roosters with Arthur, and he was a great fella,
Mm,
and I really enjoyed the time I had with him. And '88 wasn't my best season, but I was on the comeback from the surgery I'd received in '87, so it wasn't my best season. But '89, felt I was back to my best with the Roosters, and anyway, that's the way it rolled.
mm. You end up at North Sydney, and it's hard when you look at the Bears' history. I mean, there's a saying that the North Sydney Bears still defeat from the jaws of victory. So I think they'd made the semis twice since 1966. Did you understand at the time the uphill battle that you may have felt chasing that premiership by going across to North Sydney? And did you have any idea of what was going to happen in 91, that amazing season at the Bears?
Well, I had 2 seasons at the Bears, 90 and 91.
Mm-hmm.
And my decision to go to North Sydney was Arthur Beeson wasn't at the Roosters anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He'd moved on. Russell Fairfax was the coach. And anyway, they didn't need my services anymore, so I didn't have a club to go with, and I had 2 clubs interested, and it was Manly and North Sydney.
Mm.
Now, Manly was a team of stars, and North Sydney was a team of younger blokes, and but David Hill took over as running the North Sydney Bears, and David came and saw me, and I felt that I needed to go somewhere where there was more passion, and like the North Sydney was full of these young guys like Billy Moore, David Fairley,
Gary Larson,
and I was like, I either go with the stars to Manly or go with the young guys at North. And I thought I'm going to go with the young guys, where they want me. Where I can be have more purpose. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
anyway, so I went to North Sydney, and it was a great experience to finish my career there. So, but they were good days.
And Pat, I want to ask you too, and you can please correct me. Did you know before that prelim final at the Sydney Football Stadium at Canberra in '91? Did you know that was going to be your last game? What was the mind thinking then? Was it injury? Like, what was happening there before that final game that you played? Did you know that if you lost, that was going to be your last game?
No, I told I discussed it with Steve Martin, and he was our coach at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, Steve, if we win this. If we win the premiership, which is what I was setting out to do, and I said, I may retire, but anyway, but I said, I don't know, and then when we didn't make it, we lost that game, so I was dead keen on playing again in 92. But the club wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't accept my. Anyway, they said it was a bit of a. They kind of lied to me, They said, well, we'll see how you handle training in the off season, and we'll see how you go with that, and if we play in the next season. And anyway, I said, well, don't worry about the training. I'll be right with the training. So I'm dead set keen on going around again in '92. But anyway, it didn't eventuate. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting though that you say that the club is kind of like saying that to you, but at the same time, there's another veteran in Mario Fennick, who ends up playing another 92, 93, plays up 3 more years as the grizzled front rower. It's just interesting that they're saying that to you, but at the same time they're allowing Mario to play on. Did you think about that at all at the time? Not necessarily about Mario personally, because he was a fantastic player, but did you compare yourself to other players and say, well, why am I getting this treatment compared to other blokes?
No, I didn't put too much attention on it. I was still involved with North Sydney as their strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
So that was, but anyway, Mario, there's no sort of animosity between any of the players,
yeah,
or jealousy of any nature. But anyway, but it's good that you mentioned Mario, because he was one of the characters of the game, and they were good days playing with those people.
And you talk about Mario as well. I was doing a bit of research today on social media, and I was on one of them. I think it was Twitter, and I searched the name Pat Jarvis, and Mario, at least twice in the last couple of years, has uploaded photos himself with your nephew Brock, and mentioned your name twice, and said the great man Pat Jarvis, Uncle Pat. So. He's a loyal man, Mario Fennick, and he's one day I hope I can get Mario on the show too, because he did play a lot of front row in his older years, so it'd be good to get him on as well.
Yeah, Moses, he's a good guy, and one of the characters of the game, and that's one of the great things about football is the people you meet. And the people you play with, and the people you play against, and there's a lot of legendary people that you get involved in thanks to sport. It's a damn shame we're on a lockdown at the moment, but when we get back to it, sporting the sporting industry is such an important facet of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, mate, it's been an honour speaking to you, Pat, but I've got 2 more questions for you before I let you go. One of them is, and through the research as well, and some feedback from old St George fans, is there's I guess the common thread of what they say about Pat Jarvis is a tough, hard player that played within the rules of the game. How did you respond or take on guys? Because I guess when you play different front rowers from your era, particularly, one week you're against another guy that plays hard and fair. The next week you've got the elbows and the eye gouges and all the rest of it, the short arms and the headbutts and all the rest. How did you counteract rival props that wanted to play outside the rules? How did you overcome them in games?
Well, one of the everyone comes into the game with different assets. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everybody turns up with the things that they're good at, and some things you're not so good at. And if you had someone like Mal Meninga had the size, the speed, he had the skill. He had a lot of good attributes that made him a good footballer. Well, I have to say, my strongest asset would have to be my ability to endure the hits and keep going. So like if you're playing against a lot of different front rowers every week, so they all had different
like skill sets and assets, kind of. You had to every week. You had to play.
had the niggle, or they had, there's a guy, John Harvey, he was always elbows Harvey.
Mm.
He was, he'd raise his elbow in self-defense every time he'd go to tackle him. So that was, like you just had to endure that stuff. You know what I mean? That was part of the game, and it didn't bother me because I could be hit and get back up again, and that I wasn't worried about getting hit or getting knocked out or whatsoever. Those things didn't faze me. The main thing was that I got back up again and kept going. So that was kind of the nature of that I brought to the game. It was that I had endurance, I had stamina, and like I just kept going as the best that I could while I was out there. So whereas someone like Wally Lewis, he was a master at so many other things. You know what I mean? And Andrew Johns, he was a master at another aspect of the game. So everybody brings a different quality to the game to make it a game, and that's what I feel was my biggest contribution was the fact that I could take the hits and get up and go again.
Yeah. All right, Pat. I've got one more for you before you go, and I've saved this specifically for last because my old man down on the south coast, he'll be listening to this, and he played a little bit of footy himself for Alawa, so he was from St. George as well, and he's told this story a few times, and I'm so happy that I got to speak to you tonight. Now, you can just completely put me in my place and laugh this off, but he tells this urban myth that it may have been when you're coming back from your knee, Rico. He tells me that back in the day, he heard a story that to straighten your leg and to fix your leg up, he heard that someone put a plank of wood down over your leg and got someone to drive a car over the top of it to straighten it up and try to fix your leg up. Now, can you laugh that off, or is there any truth to that?
Well, it wasn't a big car. It was only a mini moke, so it wasn't.
So it didn't happen?
Well, you know what? As you get older, sometimes the truth gets distorted a little bit. And anyway, I turned up at the physio there one day, and physiotherapy, and they said, "Oh, your knee's got straighter now." I said, "Yeah, I was straighter because I got my missus to drive the car over the plank." And anyway, that was just a little comment to the side. The next minute, I'm reading about this stuff.
So the physio gave you up.
In books later on, I'm hearing about this story. I go, God, you'll be careful what you say. It goes a long way.
Oh, mate, did you ever call to the physio and say, "Mate, what are you doing?"
Oh, that sounds like a good story. I just thought I'd let it be.
It's a fantastic story, mate, and my old man will be happy to hear that. Pat, we're going to have to cut this one short, mate. We've gone an hour, which is fantastic, and it's been great to talk about your career, mate, and I truly appreciate you coming on the show, and it will be available, and I'll send you through the link if you want to hear yourself back and talk about all the things that you're going through with your career. Unfortunately, mate, you didn't get that premiership, but what a career it was. You represented your country, your state, and you're a club legend for the team that you grew up supporting. Thank you very much, Pat, for being on the show tonight, and we will chat again soon. I'm very, very sure.
Oh, thanks, Curtis, mate. It's nice to reminisce a little bit, but and bring back those fond memories. That's for sure. Thanks for your time and your contribution to the game is it's all part of what makes the game great. You know what I mean?
Good on you, Pat. Thank you very much, mate.
See you, Curtis. Bye now.